I really enjoy having the pleasure of sharing the results of this particular observational study with you. Now, this was a 12-year observational study, and this data was extracted from the Framingham Heart Study. And what they noticed was a strong correlation between this consumption of the subclass of flavonoids, known as flavonols, otherwise Kaempferol, quercetin, myricetin, fisetin, or fisetin, myricetin, or quercetin, and of course Kaempferol once again. Beside the point, the consumption of a mere 10 milligrams of flavonols from this particular group on a daily basis, about the equivalent of one medium-sized apple over 12 years, resulted in the strong association of a 20% reduction on the onset of frailty. And that is just the beginning of this observational study itself. So literally, think about it. Just the consumption of one medium-sized apple containing 10 milligrams of this subclass of flavonoids known as flavonols basically had the association of a 20% reduction of the onset of frailty. Now, the reason I say association as opposed to cause, because data has to be looked at a little more to make sure there's no other confounding factors. To be fair, for example, it could be the lifestyle of an individual that consumes these flavonols can have an impact as well. For the data analysts out there, they understand. But just the same, just the consumption of one medium-sized apple was associated with a 20% reduction of the onset of frailty. In the individuals that, I should say, not age, I like to use the word mature, as an individual matures. Now, there's even more to it than that, because the impact of quercetin was even more pronounced. Can't cover the pronunciation for everybody, but let's get right into the study as follows. Flavanol-rich foods like apples and blackberries can lower chances of developing frailty. Quote, there may be some validity to the old saying, an apple a day keeps a doctor or frailty away, said the authors. Quote, our findings suggest that for every 10 milligram higher intake of flavonols per day, the odds of frailty were reduced by 20%. Individuals can easily consume 10 milligrams of flavonols intake per day, since one medium-sized apple, to reiterate, it's important, has about 10 milligrams of flavonols. Let's look at the full study, just to give you a little more insight and to how impactful quercetin was. Are you ready? Higher intake of dietary flavonols, specifically dietary quercetin, is associated with lower odds of frailty onset over 12 years. A follow-up among adults in the Framingham Heart Study. There's your long title. Now, to pull up this one highlight, which is real important, but for every 10 milligrams a day of higher quercetin intake was associated with a 35% lower odds of frailty onset. That's the main takeaway here, besides the pronunciation differences. 35% lower risk of the onset of frailty just by 10 milligrams a day of quercetin. Now, a lot of people are going to go, well, what if I take 1,000 milligrams, 5 milligram capsule? What if I take it outside the food group? Again, that's interjecting what's called publisher bias, because it could be other confounding factors as time begins to devolve, or basically evolves and begins to look into detail and reference the data to make sure no other confounding factors corrupted this outcome, or may, should say, created a fog of data. So basically, at this point in time, just the mere consumption of 10 milligrams extra a day of quercetin, that particular flavonoid, as opposed to the whole flavonol group of Kaempferol, myricetin, and fisetin, whatever you pronounce, as well, yielded a 35% reduction in the onset of frailty. That is big breaking news in regard to this observational 12-year study. To proceed, although there was no significant association between total flavonoid, remember that's the main group, and we'll look at the subgroup, the intake in frailty, higher flavonol intake, one of the subclasses of flavonoids, was associated with the lower odds of developing frailty. Specifically, higher quercetin intake was the flavonoid that had the strongest association with frailty prevention. The data suggests that there may be a particular subclass of flavonols, that have the most potential as a dietary strategy for frailty prevention. Frailty prevention is weakness, balance issues, so on and so forth. As you look into it, it's sad. But to be able to mitigate it easily with at least the association of consumption of one medium-sized apple per day is worth its weight in gold. Again, gratitude for the data, or I should say the researchers, I'm about to say data analysts, or data scientists, but the researchers in reference to basically finding this observation in the Framingham Heart Study, because it can do a lot of good, and I'm really, really happy and excited to have the opportunity to share it with you. Again, gratitude. I am humbled you watch. Look forward to see you all once again next week. Catch you next time. Bye.